Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Missed calls, slow replies, messages scattered everywhere. If you're running a business, that's not just annoying, it's revenue slipping away. That's where Quo comes in, spelled Q-U-O. Quo is the #1 rated business phone system on G2. One shared business number for calls and texts. Stop missing customers. Start capturing every opportunity. Try Quo free and get 20% off your first 6 months at quo.com/tech. That's QUO.com/tech. Quo. No missed calls, no missed customers.
Hello, and welcome back to the Psych Legal Pop Podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about popular culture through the lens of an attorney and a therapist. I'm Brooke Brigham, I'm the attorney.
And I'm Tess Brigham, I'm the therapist.
And today we are going to be talking about a new docuseries on Netflix called Gone Girls, the Long Island Serial Killer. And this is directed and produced by Liz Garbus, who is a well-known documentary filmmaker. And it's a very good documentary. I'm going to start with reading a synopsis of what the doc is about. And it's a little long, but there's a lot going on here. And we wanted to get all the general facts out there because we don't want to have to, go through them. We want to be able to talk about the bigger issues. So, anyway, this documentary, Gone Girls, the Long Island Serial Killer, is a 3-part Netflix docuseries directed by Liz Garbus, released on March 31st, 2025. It delves into the Gilgo, am I saying that right?
Yeah, I think so.
Gilgo Beach murders on Long Island, chronicling the 13-year investigation that led to the arrest of Rex Heuermann in July 2023. The series examines the case through the perspectives of the victims, their families, and law enforcement. It highlights the challenges faced by the victims, many of whom were sex workers, and the systemic issues that hindered the investigation. The series spends time on the first 4 located victims and the long search for justice their families undertook. These women, Melissa Bartholomew, Amber Lynn Costello, Maureen Brainerd Barnes, and Megan Waterman, were originally known as the Gilgo Four because they were all found along the same stretch of Long Island's Ocean Park near Gilgo Beach in 2010 and 2011, during a search for another missing woman, Shannon Gilbert. More fascinating is just how close the case came to never being solved at all. In 2023, Heuermann was arrested for the murders of the Gilgo Four. Since Gone Girls wrapped, he's been charged with 3 additional murders, those of Jessica Taylor, Valerie Mack, and one woman, Sandra Castilla, who'd been long thought to be the victim of an entirely different serial killer. Because these arrests happened after or near the end of Gone Girls filming, the documentary doesn't spend much time at all on these 3 women. It spends even less time on the Long Island serial killer's 4 other probable victims, 3 of whom are currently still unidentified. With the investigations into the first 7 murders wrapping up, it's uncertain what will happen to these 4 cases. For years, the Suffolk County Police, under the leadership of longtime Chief James Burke, fielded criticism for botching the Long Island serial killer case. Even as the case became national news, an infamous true crime mystery, and a frequent topic of true crime docuseries, and even a previous Netflix docudrama. But just how badly they botched it didn't become clear until the investigation was in new hands. Once the old guard was no longer in the picture, the new investigation ramped up with remarkable speed. In 2018, a new police chief took over and promptly restarted the investigation. In 2020, authorities released the most famous piece of evidence in the case, the belt buckle found at the Brainerd Barnes crime scene. Then, in 2021, came yet another new police chief, Rodney Harrison. Shortly after assuming office, he announced a new task force dedicated to solving the crime. Harrison's task force, working from an abundance of phone records tied to the suspect's trove of burner phones, identified Huerman within just 6 weeks of starting to look for him. Under Burke's tenure in one of the highest-profile serial killer cases in American history, his department did the bare minimum and never traced the phone records of a suspect. Gone Girls makes clear that the answer boils down to hubris and corruption. Between May 2010 and December 2011, the time between when Shannon Gilbert went missing and was ultimately found, authorities had actively investigated the case, repeatedly searching the marshlands along the shore, and eventually locating the remains of 11 victims, including Gilbert. Yet progress stalled when Burke, a longtime protege of the county prosecutor Thomas Spoda, took office in 2012. Burke spent years refusing to work with the FBI, which, according to the documentary, had initially taken the lead on the investigation of the phone records. When communication between the feds and the cops broke down, so too, it seemed, did the investigation itself. But Burke had bigger problems. He spent most of his tenure as police chief attempting to cover up the brutal beating of a suspect after a bizarre 2012 incident. The suspect, Christopher Loeb, allegedly stole a gym bag full of sex toys and porn from Burke's SUV, not realizing it belonged to the police chief. Burke reacted by sending a horde of officers to Loeb's residence to arrest him and locking him up for the next 48 hours. Burke visited Loeb's house himself and removed a litany of items. He and other officers physically assaulted Loeb, repeatedly denied him access to his attorney, threatened to arrest and sexually assault Loeb's mother, and choked him to unconsciousness, all while falsifying police reports about the arrest. Burke's efforts to obstruct the FBI's investigation into the beating ultimately led to criminal convictions for himself, longtime county prosecutor Thomas Spoda, and the former anti-corruption bureau chief. Multiple members of the Suffolk police force were forced to resign and face charges over the scandal. The Long Island serial killer investigation was clearly a casualty of Burke's corruption and the war between the police and FBI. After the investigation finally relighted itself, however, results came fairly swiftly. Prosecutors are moving forward with the charges concerning the murders of 7 of Huberman's alleged victims, and the triumphant task force has recently expanded to tackle other unsolved cases. And presently, Huerman is going through no trial date has been set. They're going through pretrial hearings regarding the use of DNA. The prosecution wants to use a certain kind of DNA testing called nuclear DNA, and the defense is arguing that it's unreliable. The last hearing was April 2nd, so that'll be ongoing for a long time. So unclear when this case will ever get to trial, because there's so much pretrial stuff that's going to happen.
Well, he's being held, I assume, with no bail. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there's a lot to this case. So, what did you think of the series overall?
Overall, I liked it. I thought it was very good and very well done. I mean, I knew bits and pieces of this case, but I didn't really know the full scope of it. And, we're on the West Coast. We're in California. So there's like all of these places. I mean, I don't think I've ever been to Long Island. I've been to New York many times, but I've never had gone to the Hamptons. I don't know what life is like out there. So, so it wasn't on our radar. I think it, what is tragic about this case is they had a description. This guy was not like he was 5'10", nondescript white guy, could blend into a crowd. I mean, he was very tall, very big. He stood out physically. He drove a car that stood out, that not many, there weren't a lot. Like, it truly, truly was so easily solvable because they had a lot of the elements there. When they finally just stopped and started working on it, it took them 6 weeks. And that's what was so frustrating is many women died after that point.
Yeah. Well, it took the new people 6 weeks.
Yes, it took the new people 6 weeks. It was the fact that, it irritates me that Spoda got 3 years in federal prison. Burke got 4 years in federal prison. It seems really short to me personally for what they did.
Obstructing justice.
But yeah.
Yeah.
And so the other part that I was confused about, because really, if you look at the timeline, Shannon Gilbert, who really started this whole thing, her disappearance, she disappeared in 2010. They did not arrest Rex. They did not.
Rex.
I can't pronounce this. Is it Humerman? Humerman. They didn't arrest him until 2023. So, 12, 13 years of. And then the other thing was that they found bodies that went back to 1993. And the other thing too is it sounds like there are also lots of other women that are missing that may also be tied to him because, what was he? There was obviously he was, prolific at this one point, but like I think Amber Costello? She was the last known victim, and that was in 2010, 2011. But
a known victim, because they were able to tie his DNA to all of these earlier ones. But then at the end of the series, they kind of flashed a list of all of these women who have never been found, who they suspect he might. That's the thing. There's bodies everywhere, and whether they'll ever be found, they may never be found. Yeah, if he killed that many people in that short of a time frame, and he had basically been a serial killer for 30 years or something, there are a lot more bodies. There are a lot more victims. And it was like the old guard, the Spoda and the
Burke.
I forget the name of Burke. Well, and the guy before Burke's predecessor. Because when the docuseries starts out, there's a different police chief. Or anyway, the old guard, the old prosecutor, and the old police chief, they couldn't care less about these cases because they did not want them to be solved. And the question is why? I mean, there's different answers to that. It could be because possibly they were involved with, we know Burke was involved with sex workers and, so they were involved in this activity. They possibly could have been seen as suspects, because they had contact with sex workers, and all these sex workers are coming up dead. And they also, I don't think they wanted to put any of their department's resources towards solving murders of sex workers because it was just very sexist. They did not care about these women. They did not care about solving this. They did not care about their families finding closure or justice or anything at all.
Well, one of them this was the first police commissioner before Burke. He made this comment of they were in a high risk business. So basically, here we go, blaming the victim, saying
you deserve it. Yeah.
You deserve. Well, hey, you were a part of this high risk business, getting in cars, going with men. Come on, of course. So, and what did Burke, though Burke denies that he called it this, but he called them misdemeanor
murders.
Like that they're not very important because of that. And we've seen this time and again. This is why people target sex workers. It's why it is because they they know that this is the perception of the police. It's also, there's another layer to this, which I hadn't really thought of before, which is, sex workers are the best people to speak to about what was going on in these other women's lives are other sex workers who maybe had encounters with these men or knew what was going on, but they didn't want to go because they had their own concerns. I mean, one woman was very clear. She said, I had a probation violation. I wasn't going to walk in there.
Right.
So that was the other problem too, is that they made no concessions to try to speak to the right people because the people that had the most information were afraid to speak to you. So there was that issue too.
Yeah. They literally made no effort. They made no effort to do anything. They didn't want to. They didn't care. It was just so obvious because, the new people come in and within 6 weeks, they've arrested this person.
Yeah. Well, Yeah. And I think there's a tremendous amount of bias, obviously, for sex workers. I think there was a lot of bias of some of these girls' families. Like, I really think that Shannon Gilbert, who is the first person that's mentioned in the documentary, who was an escort, Craigslist escort, and she, we still don't quite know what went on with her. Something freaked her out. Something got her worried. She
called 911.
Yeah. She called 911. She was scared half her mind. And then the mom tried to go to the police and say, listen, my daughter's missing. Like, don't you see? There was this phone call. She was being chased, like, and all of that. But I think the other problem too is I do wonder if that mom had been a mom and dad and they were part of some, prominent family or maybe a different kind of family. Like, there's just a lot of bias of, no.
Yeah, there's socioeconomic bias.
Yes.
There's misogyny. These women who were killed, it was a lot of single mothers. I didn't see any dads.
Yeah. Single moms.
Every single one. And some of them had children. And wasn't Shannon, she was trying to make enough money so that she could pay the child support or something so she could see her child?
Yes. She had a court date coming up. She had to make $3,000 for this upcoming court date because she wanted to, there was an issue with the kids. And I think that her ex, I guess, was very vindictive and was using her, I guess, the sex work and some other things against her. And so, she wanted to show up to court and show that she could make, have the money, whatever it was. So, this wasn't, that was the other thing too, that was very surprising because I think usually we were talking about this before we started recording. Usually there's a correlation between drug use and addiction and sex work, but I didn't get the sense any of these women were addicted to anything. I mean, it truly felt like they were just trying to make enough money to live.
Yeah. Yeah. It was really, it was sad. It was upsetting because every single one of these women had a mother, a sister, family members who loved and cared about them. And they all came together and kind of formed this support group. And we're trying to get the word out, having press conferences and getting, trying to tell people, look, these women are missing. These are our daughters. These are our sisters. We love these people. These are good people. They're just trying to survive. But I also wonder too, like, I wonder if their family members knew or if they didn't know and they just didn't want to go to their family members and say, I need help. And so they had to turn to sex work to survive. I'm just curious, like the dynamic, because it's like you said, it's not like these were women who had no one who cared about them and who are on drugs and just, not at all.
Or even, that you had a family member who was a drug addict and you've had to cut them off because that's what you need to do, loving detachment. So, you don't know what they're doing or you knew what they were doing. I mean, it really did feel like a lot of these families were like, wait, what? What was going on? Had no idea. And it's a very sad state of affairs that as a woman, the easiest, fastest way to make money is through sex work.
Yeah, I know. And how frightening. And, a couple women had encounters with this Hewerman and managed to get away from him. What was the woman's name? Taylor, who was that her name? She started to realize that she was in his house.
Yeah, that was the beginning of episode 3. Let me look. Yeah. She was there to do a drug deal. Mm-hmm. She was just there because she was working at like the Gold Club, which is a strip club, and was, I guess, using drugs. And someone said to her, oh, can you do this drug deal? You'll make a cut from it. And thank God that woman had a taser.
Yeah, she tased him and she got away.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, so this guy turns out to be, he's a architect by day, working in Manhattan,
mm-hmm.
Commuting into Manhattan. And then he lives in this Long Island suburb, but it's this very nice suburb where all the houses are very nice. Everyone cares about their house, very well maintained. And he's living in this real dilapidated house that was his parents' house where he grew up.
Mm-hmm.
And all the neighbors, they're looking at him like, oh God, he's bringing our neighborhood down.
Yeah.
Like, why doesn't he?
There's always one of those people.
There's always one.
God damn you.
Yeah. And, but people people maybe saw him as a little odd. He was married and he had 2 kids, and apparently they began to be able to track his movements and saw that he was always doing these killings when his wife and kids were out of town.
Yeah, because I noticed when you start to the Gilgo 4 and the other bodies that are found, or when a lot of these women were disappearing, they were all summer months. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was really interesting. Like they were like June, July, September, and then it will be dormant, and then April, right? Like, so it does make sense. Like, oh, this is when the family's traveling.
Yeah, he has to wait till they're out of the picture. Yeah, so they get they get all this information. They think it's him, but they need to get a DNA sample so they can test it against all these victims. And so someone follows him around, and he's walking down the streets of New York, and he throws away a pizza box. And so they pick up the pizza box. They get his DNA off of the pizza crust left in the box, and they begin matching him to all these victims.
Yeah.
And really just, scary. And then they show up in his neighborhood, and they spent like, I don't know, how many days was it? Like searching his house. It was,
I don't know.
Days and days. And they recovered 300 firearms.
Yes. Yes.
Really weird.
But none of the women were shot.
No.
Like most women were strangled.
Yeah, strangled. And then sometimes he would dismember them and scatter their body parts. I don't know.
And that was one of the things that was interesting because, under the original guard, they wanted nothing to do with the FBI. The FBI kept showing up going, hey, do you want our help? And they're like, no. Which is also very suspicious. And I think the FBI found that suspicious. But, their profilers said that he would be a middle-aged white man who's socially competent, but that was really blends in well, probably a family man, but also really devious. And Amber, I mean, this is the part that is just will make you pull your hair out. So Amber Costello is the last known victim that we know of. And she had these 2 roommates who encountered Rex and Amber at one point. And they called the police. They told the police, no. This guy is 6'8", 300 pounds. He drives a green Chevy. They gave him, they gave this perfect description. And when they actually did the police work, they found that, oh, well, there's only actually one green Chevy truck that matches that. And that belongs to a guy that's 6'8". Oh, huh.
Oh, wow. What are the chances?
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit like it was not, once the bodies were found, it was not a hard case to solve. You know what I mean? It wasn't. And that's why I will say you got to give Mary Gilbert, Gilbert's mother, who has since passed away. Didn't realize that. She didn't look that old. Not quite sure what happened. I think all the stress probably killed her.
The stress of all this, yeah.
But she was really the one that got all this started. Because if she hadn't been there putting pressure on them, they would have never searched that area, never found those bodies. And then they finally decided to start searching for Shanann and they found her body and her remains not far. They found all of her stuff, not far from where she called the cell phone,
right.
like not far from there. And then they found her with no pants on in this deep marsh.
Yeah.
They took a long time to find it. And of course, there's this debate, like, obviously that means it's a homicide. No. The one guy's like, well, when you get hypothermia, that makes you think that you're really, really hot and people start stripping off their clothes. Well,
what is she doing out in a marsh in the middle of the night? It's like, she didn't get there willingly. Because they start the series, the opening scene is this 911 call that Shanann makes. And she's screaming. She's saying someone's going to hurt her, kill her. And then you hear her screaming. So she's obviously being chased.
Yeah.
Whatever. And she out of this trying to get away from this house. And that's the thing. They had records from that call. That was a cell phone call.
Yep.
And this Huerman is using burner phones, but they actually, catch him that he's on video going into these stores in Manhattan, putting more minutes on a burner phone. I mean, they had so much information at their disposal. And I just keep going back to why. I mean, are they the Spoda and Burke, like, are they covering up something that they're involved in or they have done? Like, why are they so cavalier and just...
Because the sense that I get, well, this is also the whole Shanann part. This wasn't explained because Shanann had gone out to Long Island to meet with a client of hers, this guy, Joe Brewer. And she was driven by this guy, Michael Pack. So, and she and Michael are friends. And this whole thing is so weird because Joe Brewer comes out of the house to Michael, to the car, and says, hey, something's going on with Shanann. She won't leave the house. She's freaked out by something. And I'm like, so what is the connection between Joe Brewer and Rex? And what happened in this house? This is the part I'm so confused about. And Michael Pack is her friend and driver. And I would think, like, your main thing is keeping this woman safe. Right. And so he looks around for a few minutes and then was like, okay, well, I went back to the city. That was weird. Like, so much of that whole story was very bizarre. Because it wasn't, I mean, I don't understand how Rex was part of that. That was the part I didn't understand. Because she went to see Joe Brewer. This wasn't near, this home that she was in wasn't near the home of Rex. So, well, maybe Rex did Rex show? Was he friends? Was with Rex John?
There
with Joe?
He must have been there.
So, but then Joe wasn't owning that. So Joe knew that, like, because that was Joe's house, Joe Brewer's house.
Yeah,
that's the part that's strange. I don't quite understand.
Yeah, because they found the DNA. I mean, she had his DNA on her.
Yeah. So
he must have been there.
Was Joe Brewer friends with Rex? And yeah.
Had to have been. That's the only connection. So, I mean, she died obviously that night.
Yeah.
So.
Or not. I mean.
Well, she's right there. She died in the marsh, land, like out behind the house. She didn't get that far.
But she was strangled. They were strangled. Yeah. So first they finally, after Mary's gone to the police constantly and begged them, 19 months later, they finally searched the marsh. They finally are like, okay, well, I guess we'll spend the money to search the marsh. They search the marsh, they find her body, and then they say it's the medical examiner makes it undetermined. So that's when they then get the famous Michael Bodden to come in and say, well, her hyphoid, the high something thoid bone, whatever the bones are. He said that is strangled. Those get broken when you're strangled. Like this woman was strangled. Like this is a homicide. Just all of it. I mean, it was terrible. When they found the first 4 women, or the first woman at Gilgo Beach, they called Mary and said, hey, we found your daughter, without doing any checking or DNA, and then had to call her back and be like, oopsies.
Yeah.
I mean, poor Mary. I think this is what killed her. I really do.
What killed her, yes.
I mean, this poor woman, all of those mothers, I mean, who isn't there some kind of protocol? How can you call someone without doing the DNA
positive
test?
Identification? Yeah.
So, yeah, it is. I think all of that's really weird. It's hard to know what was going on with these guys, with Spoda and Burke, because obviously I think their hands were in a lot of things. I think this is what was going on. I think that these were low value importance to them, wasn't going to help them or their careers any way, shape, or form, investigating these murders. I think investigating these sex workers may bring up some kind of connection to them.
Right.
So they didn't want that to happen.
Right.
And I think they justified it by saying, oh, these women, they're sex workers. Like, who cares? And then I think the other thing was that Burke apparently had many, many internal affairs. He was under investigation. He had issues. I think the guy was basically doing bad things, was probably on the payroll for a lot of bad people. And I think that was his job. I think his job was being corrupt and working for whomever he was working for, getting false confessions, getting favors, doing this, doing that. And I think that he probably these guys were right on the edge of that. And it was like, oh no, we can't go that far. I think it was that. I think they were too busy covering their own asses.
Exactly. Because this duffel bag that was stolen by this Christopher Loeb, in it was porn, old school VHS tape porn.
Jimmy Burke, he's old school, people.
Old school. Maybe it was a CD, I'm not sure. But sex toys.
Yes.
And then like a bunch of his business cards. Among other various things. And this was just in his little duffel bag in his car in plain sight.
Yeah. Not even locked up or anything like that, because Christopher Lowe was a drug addict. He was just supporting his habit. He was breaking into cars.
Yeah, breaking into cars. He didn't know whose car this was.
But here's the thing. Where do you keep your business cards? You keep them in your purse. So you might want to take that out. I keep it in my office.
The glove box or
maybe you take them with you to a networking event. It's sort of like, okay, I've got my porn. I've got my sex toys. Oh, I got to get my business cards. I mean, to me, that means that all these things were connected. Like, you were handing out business cards with the sex toys. I mean, there's something about this that just felt like,
I think
this was convenience.
Right. He knew that if they started digging into this, his name would come up. And one of these sex workers who they interviewed would be like, wait a minute, I know you.
Yeah. Hey, Jim.
Long time no see.
Jimmy. Psych Legal Pop. We'll be back after these messages.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.
Chicago, 2011. A cop is murdered. Police and prosecutors swear they have the trigger man. He swears he didn't do it. How far will each side go to prove they're right?
Like it's just one bombshell after another, where you're like, what?
The story of a PlayStation, a brain-eating amoeba, and the relentless pursuit of justice. Off Duty, out now. Listen wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah.
He did not want to be anywhere near this investigation.
No.
At all.
And I also think they're lazy. I mean, I'll be perfectly honest. I think they talk about how Suffolk County, they were the highest paid county. So it was like a good gig to get. You wanted to get it. And I also think there was a certain amount of laziness and I think that when you're that corrupt and that's a full-time job.
Right.
You can't work the actual job
covering
you're paid
up
for.
Stuff. Yeah.
Covering up stuff takes up all of your time and energy, and you just don't have time for anything else. So when they went into, and this was another strange thing is, so this Huberman guy seems like this mild-mannered guy by day. They show so there was a video of him where he was being interviewed by someone. Yeah, that was weird, like some kind of German web show or something. So weird. about architecture, and he's talking about architecture and what he's good at, and he seems like this kind of brainy, geeky guy. And even though he's very imposing, he's very big. He doesn't, but you start talking to him, he's like seems like a gentle giant. But he's not. He's completely sadistic. They find, when they seize his computer, and even though he had tried to scrub everything, there's always a way to get back in there. And they found all kinds of crazy, of course, emails where he's trying to solicit sex workers, but also these very detailed lists of basically how to kill people, like what supplies you need. What supplies you need, details about, where you're going to go, what you're going to do. And he over time would perfect it. So because he was killing for many years. So he would learn a lesson about, that rope is too flimsy and it broke. So next time we got to get the thicker rope. Yeah.
And it was just crazy.
And that was the part that really bugged me, that there was always this argument, was this one person? Was this multiple people? And the thing was that there was always this argument of the first 4 were found in burlap, but this person, their torso was gone. And then this person was like this. Shouldn't they all have the same MO? And I think that I remember before I even heard about the blueprint plan, I was thinking in my head, wouldn't you perfect yourself over time?
Right.
You would get better and better at that.
You learn your lessons about things. Yeah.
That was the other part that was kind of odd. I was like, what? And I don't know if it was the FBI that didn't believe that it would be different or whatever, but I was like, why is this so hard for people to believe that? Yeah, most likely this is all these women are sex workers. they all look alike, I mean, anyway, can we just go back to a second I want to go back to the Jim Burke thing. So, Mary, Shanann's mom, hires her own attorney. This guy, John Ray, the attorney. He was a character. Now, he really, I have to say, because I mean, this guy cared. He really did care. Absolutely. Yeah. He cared about Shanann. He wanted to get to the truth. He was helping Mary with this. But we then see him give a press conference with this woman, Leanne, who basically didn't testify, it was in court, but said, I, am a sex worker. I had an interaction, a sexual interaction with James Burke. He couldn't perform, people. And then he got mad at her and said she was a bad whore. I was like, that's not on her. But anyway, we hear her testimony, but this guy, John Ray, I mean, did you see what he was wearing at that press conference? Okay, I just need to stop for a second because I had to write it down. He was wearing a fedora that's bright yellow. And then he's wearing a blue and white striped jacket, like he was in a barbershop quartet, with a bright blue vest. It was a lot. And, he had a ponytail too.
Yeah. I was just baffled by that.
And he seemed he seems very competent. And I was just like, again, I think people should be able to express themselves however they want. But being a therapist, I don't wear graphic t-shirts with my clients that give them certain impression. Like, you just kind of don't do certain things just because you need to be kind of neutral.
You need to be a blank slate.
Yeah. And I just kind of felt like, wow, Johnny, you really want to be a star or something. There's something going on here. Anyway, I found him to be fascinating, but it seemed like even after Mary died, and I doubt this guy was getting paid much. Like, even after Mary died, he cared enough to keep going. So I think he's a good attorney. It's just a little, I just want to know about his fashion choices.
A little eccentric. Well, one thing that Leanne woman said during that press conference was that Burke tried to strangle her when they were having their sexual encounter, which was a signature, thing that happened in all these other cases.
Yeah.
So again,
but that might also
too close.
And that might also be a little bit like, maybe he also, I would think that there might be many, several men that are into the strangling. I guess I just wonder if, like, did he and Rex kind of maybe run in those same circles? Like, he kind of sort of knew that there was this guy, and boy, he physically meets all these things, and seems like he's with him a lot. I don't know, just all of it.
Wow.
It's just all just awful.
Yeah. Well, and they talk a little bit about the neighbors talk about, because his family had lived in that same house for decades. And they talked about Rex's father. And apparently he was a total tyrant and violent with his mother and violent with the children. And then there was a childhood friend who talked about how, Rex was really bullied because he was a big kid and he was kind of awkward, and the kids would just beat him up and he wouldn't even fight back.
Yeah.
Even though he could have, he was a big guy.
Yeah.
But he would just kind of let them do it. So he had issues. I mean, obviously.
I mean,
no serial killer just born a serial killer.
That was the thing is that, I think that was what was so bizarre about it. Almost like the neighbors didn't believe he was an architect by the state of his home.
Right.
Because I don't know if you know many architects, but any architect client I've had, any architect that I've known, they put a lot of pride in their homes. Like interior designers, people that do this for a living. Like, I can understand that you have certain, people always talk about this, like landscapers, their yards are a mess. And I can understand that. But usually architects, you have to be really smart to pass that exam. And it's not an easy job. And it seems so odd that here was a man who was in this abusive home growing up. Wouldn't you want to get away from that? Wouldn't you want to run as far away from that home? But then you stay in the home and you change nothing. You're an architect. You of all people would know how to change things. You change nothing. It's like a shrine. And that's the thing about it that was so odd. It was like, this was a shrine to his pain, to his anger, to his abuse. And it was almost like he got off being in it, like still being in that place. I mean, the family was quirky.
Yeah.
So his family's a little quirky.
The wife was a little cuckoo crazy. So after the FBI completely raids their home, rips it apart, that everything that was inside has either been removed or it's been moved outside. I guess they don't have anywhere else to go. So they come back and they're literally sort of camping in the front yard.
Yeah.
With cooking out there, with whatever is left out there, and yelling at the press. There's all this press out in front of the house. And
well, I do want to say, I did feel from them in the sense of there were also probably 2 dozen people, just regular citizens, standing there with their iPhones recording all of it. And I think this is one of the things that it's happened in our world a little bit. It's a little bit like, press shouldn't be bugging, but why are you all just standing there? Like, I did feel for them. They were like animals in a cage that everyone was watching for their own entertainment so they can then go back. Now, she seemed a little quirky, the wife. she divorces, she files for divorce, but she starts showing up to court dates. So it's a little unclear about what's going on. And, you do have to ask yourself and wonder, not so much about, I can understand not knowing what he's doing. Like he's, oh yeah, I'll meet you for that vacation. You go, I'll meet you in a week. I've got all these meetings. Like I can understand someone believing that and being like, oh, okay, catch up with us in a week, whatever. But how could you move into that home and knowing, oh, this is your childhood home and nothing's changed? Like that, his wife didn't want to go like, maybe we should update the bathroom. Maybe we should redo the kitchen. Maybe we should paint the outside. I mean, the place was completely worn down. Mm-hmm. And so it's a little bit like, it wasn't him living alone. So no, she never insisted on that. She never asked for that. So it makes you wonder about their marriage and what was going on there. And the kids, the girl who is there, she had a boy from a previous marriage and then they had a girl together. I mean, she looked like she was staring into the cameras like,
shell shock.
I'm like, I wonder if she's even, I think she's learned how to detach, to disassociate. Mm-hmm. I was looking at her, I'm like, I think she's completely disassociated right now. I don't think she's here with us. Mm-hmm. She goes off somewhere else, which is what you'd have to do. But that was weird to me too. Like, you met this man, you married him, you brought your son into this world and you didn't ask, like, hey, why are you still living in this house? Even if you didn't know about the abuse, well, why haven't you updated the kitchen? You're an architect. Why haven't you painted the outside?
What is he doing with all of his money? Because I'm sure he got paid well.
Yeah.
I mean...
Yeah, he had an office, Fifth Avenue. I mean, architects make good money. So even living there, I mean, I don't know if the wife worked or not, but yeah, was it all going into guns and porn? And rope and
prostitutes,
to sex workers and to all of that. But how are you spending money on the sex workers? You're killing them. You're not even going to pay them.
Well, maybe he didn't kill all of them because he seemed to be quite busy with all of this. So I don't know.
I guess maybe he visited a lot of sex workers and maybe some of them are alive and some of them aren't. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, some of them got away. I think, and then there was another woman who, remember she met him at a restaurant and he started talking and it dawned on her that, oh my God, that this is the Long Island serial killer, and she texted her friend and said, come to the parking lot, come pick me up.
Yeah.
So she got away. And then there was another woman who tased him who got away. So, if you're doing sex work, I'm sure you have to be hyper vigilant. Mm-hmm. And sometimes you can get away from a situation like that. And sometimes you can't. Mm-hmm. It's just so sad to me. Like, it breaks my heart. Breaks my heart for these women and
it's
their
just
families.
Yeah. I mean, it's really heartbreaking. You know what it was that he started asking that one woman they met at the restaurant about the Gilgo murders, and he starts asking her like, do you know anything about it? I mean, so there's another element of this was he would use the phone of his victims to call family members, it was, let's see, one of the Gilgo 4 women, which one was it? Melissa Bartholomew, Bartholomew. It was her sister who got a bunch of calls from Rex, like taunting her and telling her things like, oh, your sister is in a this is right. Maureen Brainerd Barnes, her friend got a phone call from a block number saying, oh, I know where Marie is. I know Marie. And that was Maureen's name that she used. And that told her like, oh, she's not missing. She's in a whorehouse in Connecticut. And then he was calling Melissa's sister and scaring her half to death and calling her. So this was like a little bit of a thing that he would do, is like taunt the women. But it sounded like that. I think that was a part of it, was that on these dates that he went on, he was starting to tell women like, well, what do you know about this person? And what do you know about that person? And the woman that got away, she said that he kind of did all those classic things that sociopaths do, where he says, woman 1, woman 2, woman 3, not Maureen, Megan, Amber.
Yeah.
Not saying their names.
Well, and also when they were searching his hard drive, they found all these searches that he had done where it was like, why hasn't the Long Island serial killer been caught? And, asking questions about the case.
Yeah.
Like trying to get information about maybe what he's doing wrong, what he needs to do differently, if anyone's on to him, if there's any theories out there on the internet that would lead to him or point to him. So he's concerned about getting caught. So yeah, there's almost this methodicalness, if that's a word, to all of this. And that, I guess that's the architect brain or whatever, he's very detailed and meticulous in all his lists and
all of it. And I think that was also part of, isn't that part of it all? I think he likes, he has this little secret about himself, and then he kind of dangles it, and he kind of tests. I mean, he definitely tests the women that have lived to tell the tale, talk about him, like testing them a little bit, asking them lots of questions and to see, how would they react. And I do believe, that is a form of, it's like a sadomasochistic pleasure, right? Because wanting to watch someone be mortified. Like he got off on calling the sister and scaring her half to death.
Oh yeah,
so,
definitely.
Yeah, he's a real winner. God.
Oh, well, this case is going to go on for a while. I mean, he's being charged with at least 7, right? Or is it up to, no, 7 as of right now. But, now that they know who this guy is, I mean, if any bodies show up, they're going to know who to look at. And this is, I wonder if it's going to actually go to trial. I mean, well, he's trying to fight this DNA, because the DNA is the key thing.
Yeah.
I mean, without the DNA connection, because the defense is trying to argue that the DNA that they're trying to use is unreliable, and they're probably also arguing it was not handled properly. All those objections and all those arguments they're going to make, but they really need that DNA, because otherwise, what do you have? That's why it took so. Well, I mean, you still have the cell phone stuff, the tracking of where he was.
We also have, I don't know if they can. We have other women that have had these encounters with him that are alive, though I don't know if you can bring that in.
Yeah, because you can't. Well, if you can bring it in to show like a pattern, a course of conduct, but you can't use like one bad act to prove, that you did another bad act. But if he's a serial killer and there's similarities, that's all the same, then that's different. But yeah, I mean, I guess you have the cell phone records. You have all the stuff that they retrieved from. I wonder if they have like direct communications between him and these women. They must. They have on the phone records.
I mean, at least you also have, again, this is the part that's so frustrating, is because I can't remember. I don't know if it was a reporter or if this was a cop who said, Amber Costello was the last known victim. They knew that. They knew that the minute they found those bodies. She was the last known victim. They said, that's your best lead. And if they had just investigated that lead, they would have gotten a description from the roommates who described him, perfectly. It's just the wake of destruction of all of it. Just the corruption and how many lives were ruined between Burke and Spoda, like, because there's a whole separate story we haven't even talked about some poor kid getting framed. I guess there was a murder of a kid, Pius, in Long Island, and they found him like beaten up at a school and rocks shoved down his throat, and that's what killed him. And, you know, two brothers, I guess, got set up for the murder, and Jimmy Burke was the star witness and basically gave the testimony that they needed. Suffolk County was known as closing cases. 95% of the cases were closed on confessions. False confessions, essentially. Which is
statistically impossible.
So you just look at this on the whole of these two being in power and all of the destruction that they caused because they were so focused on these other things and because they were so dirty. They weren't focusing on this thing over here that was solvable.
Right.
People are now in prison that shouldn't be in prison. And the other guy that was arrested, there's another person that is, he says he's innocent, is John Britoff.
Well, they were trying to pin that Sandra Castillo on him.
Yes. And they found no DNA, but if they had, but then when they tested Rex's DNA, oh, guess what? Look whose DNA shows up. So, but John Britoff, he has always maintained his innocence and he is still in prison today, I believe.
Yeah. He's been in prison for like 10 years. Because
of these other two murders that could very easily, so I'm wondering what's going on with that. Like they denied him a new trial. I mean, to me, I feel like that's excellent evidence. Like, why can't you just check the DNA on those people?
Yeah. All they wanted to do is, they interviewed his defense attorney. She was explaining how they were trying to get an order from the court or some kind of reconsideration of this to try to do a DNA test to see if Rex's DNA matched the two women that this guy's accused of killing. And they denied it.
So what's going on there? Why can't you do that? How hard is that?
So, and again, here we are where, this is blatant misconduct. This does exist. And, again, every time we, in all these other, high profile cases, we bring up, well, there's a possibility here, reasonable doubt and this and that. And people go, oh, no. I mean, even, it's tragic.
Yeah.
It's really tragic. And, and just because we have DNA, it doesn't always get used, doesn't always get used properly. All kinds of holes in the system. But there's even without the DNA, obviously there's a lot here. So I guess we'll have to follow this and see if and when it ever goes to trial.
Yeah, you would think over time we've been struggling with police corruption since, I don't know, the beginning of time. It seems like you would think that they would try to figure out, like, maybe we should start giving different kinds of psychological tests, like trying to identify what happens. Because I do think that this absolute power that the police have sometimes, it's just it seems to corrupt a lot of them.
Well, it's not just police, it's politicians. It's anybody in a position of power. It's that saying, power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely. It is everywhere. It's a human response, a human condition, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't matter. I mean, the school board, if you give someone a little bit of power, not everyone obviously does this, but it's very tempting. And people just want to feel important. They want to get perks. They want to get treated special. They want, I don't know.
Because it makes you feel good. Yeah. I mean, listen, if you're the most popular guy at the bar, if you're the most, all of that, it makes people feel wanted and seen and heard. And I'm not saying across the board, this is how all politicians are, this is how all cops are, but there are professions that I kind of feel like we spend a lot of time on certain professions and focusing on, how do we keep them honest? How do we do this? Right? Doctors but police, we seem to kind of not get this. I don't know. I don't know what needs to change. I don't know if police need a lot of psychological training and bias, like very early on. I don't know. I don't know what needs to happen. But
I don't know if they come in that way, though.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how do you keep them from going there? Because I do think that, right, you and I both have jobs where we have some sort of level of power, but why haven't we, why am I not? I could do a bunch of crapola. I could say a bunch of stuff to my clients. I could cheat the system. I could do this. I could do that. So, but I do think that there is a level of like people understanding, like, well, how you get there and why you get there and the bias. I don't know. Because I agree with you. I don't think people start out this way. I think maybe Jimmy Burke was. I think that guy was a little bit of but I would want to know more about Jimmy Burke's life. My guess is I think that guy probably had abuse in his childhood. I find it hard to believe that you would, you would get to this place.
Yeah. I think a lot of it, like our professions, I think are more regulated. There are people like micromanaging,
Oh yeah.
like what, and we're also checked by other institutions, like lawyers are checked by judges and other lawyers, there's people watching you. There are people watching everything that you do who can complain about you at any time. But like with the police and politicians, people who they're doing so much that's outside of people's, that people are not witnessing, and they're working. They're not being micromanaged. There's not someone overseeing them all the time. It's just easier for them to get away with, cutting. You cut a little corner here, you cut a little corner here, and then where does it end?
Yeah.
And some people are just more susceptible to that than others. And like we're saying, not everybody does it. But if you're at all susceptible to it, then you're just going to do it. I just feel like when you're a cop, you're out there on your own. You're with your partner in your patrol car. You have so much power.
Yeah.
You can pull people over. You have a gun. You can demand that people get out of their car and handcuff them and get on the ground. It's just so much power.
Yeah.
So much power. We don't have that much power.
Yeah, I guess no. Mine's all just psychological. Just mentally. But there is that feeling of like, okay, so why am I being regulated constantly? And I understand why. Both of our professions should be regulated, but police should be regulated even more. And that's why, that's important to have oversight for these roles and these jobs. And that's the other thing that's really frightening is apparently James Burke had this very long line of internal affairs investigations. That means how many people never reported anything and never said a word? That is the other part of it.
Yeah.
Like if you've got a dozen or so, that means you've got at least 100 and 200 incidents easily.
Yeah.
So that's the other scary part. Like at what point internal affairs do you go, it's like Bill Cosby, 80 women?
Yeah.
There's a little bit of like, at what point do you say, oh, okay, there's a pattern here?
I don't know. I wish I knew. And I just...
Well, to me, I feel like they need more women because, what happens is they get rid of these two guys. They hire this woman from the FBI. She comes in, she gets things rolling with the case. And then then she leaves. The next commissioner is a person of color. He then gets the thing done. I'm like, of course, the woman, the person of color, of course.
Shit. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, we've covered a lot of documentaries where it's a woman law enforcement person who cracks the case and who goes, wait a minute. It's like, something's not right here. And I think that's part of it. Not to say that there aren't women who are capable of that, but there are less of them in these positions. So maybe we just don't hear about it. I don't know. There's something about, the men and the kind of, I don't know.
You know what it is? I think there's something with men and power and sex. Because I think that some women like power, but I've never felt this great need to be uber powerful and want to lord things over people. And I think that I don't know. I mean, I think the other part of it too is I've never had some desire to visit sex workers or, just that there's something about that. I don't know.
Yeah, men and women are different.
Yes, they are. This is why women need to be running the police. Why don't we just let women lead? Give us 5 to 6 years. I bet we could take over a county.
Yeah. Give us a chance to take over, like a whole city or something.
Yes.
And let's see what happens.
Yeah.
And, if we screw it all up, then okay.
Fine.
But, give us a chance. But
I don't know. I've seen a lot of police investigations about male police officers. I don't know. Someone, please correct me if I'm wrong. I will absolutely see. I can be wrong. So I want to hear about a female detective that was sleeping with sex workers and taking advantage of the system. If you know it, please tell me.
Yeah, I'm open to hear about it. I just have never heard about it.
All right. Well, although our next movement, women police commissioners.
Although, there does seem to be something on the rise with these women, mostly like teachers, having sex with teenage boys.
Oh, yes. What is going on here?
I don't know.
Yes. I just saw some video the other day. This, and it's a little bit like, wait, what? What is happening? But
why is this happening now?
Yes. I mean, obviously there's been a lot of male teachers that have preyed on students, but there have been a lot of female teachers. That is
maybe there always has been. Maybe boys just feel safer being able to come out and talk about it. I don't know. Maybe they're just getting caught more.
I mean, I think there was less, but I think the thing is that I think that the boys don't see it as a bad thing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't know if did you ever watch that movie with Anna Kendrick? It was called, no. And it wasn't Anna Kendrick. I think it was Mara Rooney or one of the Rooney sisters, called A Teacher.
Oh, I've heard about it. I didn't watch it.
I want to say it was like it was pre-COVID. So I want to say it was like 2018, 2019. And it was about this woman. She was married. She was about 30-ish, like late 20s, married, unhappy in her marriage, wasn't working out, but she takes up with this student and they kind of like, quote unquote, fall in love. And then she gets caught. And, but one of the pieces of it is we see him, the kid that she had sex with, we see him a year later at college, and everyone at college knows what's happening. They all know that, oh, you're the guy that slept with the teacher and blah, blah, blah. And he was like kind of known as the stud, but but he was really he was struggling, really, really struggling because, I think he was starting to recognize the power imbalance and the fact that he was a kid and wait a second and all of that. So I do. Yeah, you're right. It may be that until recently, it hasn't been acceptable for men to say that wasn't okay or that wasn't consensual.
Yeah. There was another movie that Julianne Moore was in.
Yes.
Where
we talked about this.
Yeah. She has sex with one of her children's friends or something.
Yeah. It's kind of related to, there was a lot of similarities between that and Mary Kay Letourneau. So we talked about Mary Kay Letourneau and we talked about that. This was Uncle Bill was one of our recommendations. We talked about that movie, the Julianne Moore movie. And it was and she had this young husband. But,
they started their affair when he was a minor. And, remember he worked in a fish store, like a pet store with the fish and the aquarium.
Yeah.
That's how it's, I don't know. Anyway, so then they end up, they get married and have children. And then, of course, he's like this very young dad. And then the kids start to become teenagers. And she's kind of I don't know, she's on pills. And she's kind of like, it was, I mean, I think it was a good movie. I can't remember now.
No, I think some people liked it. Some people didn't like it. It had a weird style to it. Julianne Moore was kind of nothing wrong with her acting, but I think her character was supposed to seem a little out of it a bit. And but yeah, there were a lot of parallels between that. And that's a great example of, at the time, I think, what was his name? Vinny? I think he was 13 years old. He was 14 years old. And I think, oh, that's so cool. An older woman, you're having sex. Isn't that great? Right? Like that sort of mentality. And it wasn't until years later that he really realized, like, no, that wasn't okay. And even though in the minds of these boys and these women, the sex was consensual, obviously, it's realizing after the fact, wait a second, I shouldn't be consenting to this.
Well, it's statutory rape. It's by definition not consensual.
Oh, okay. Then you're right. Then I guess it isn't.
Yeah. Well, and also it was the same with Mary Kay Letourneau with Billy. That messed him up.
Yes,
it messed him up for the rest of his life. To this day. I mean, she's passed away now, but
I think her dying was probably the best thing that ever happened to him.
Yeah, I mean,
I think her being gone. But no,
her daughters.
He was like 16 years old and he had 2 kids. He had no childhood.
I think she first started having sex with him when he was like 12.
Yeah, it was like something was going on
11 or 12.
Early. Yeah. But he was quote unquote mature. Like, again, if the roles were reversed, we would be mortified by this. And it is mortifying. But that, I think he was like 15, 16 years old and he had 2 young kids. She's in prison.
She's in prison.
So she can't help him. And then, of course, his family's taking care. I mean, it's just awful.
That was an awful story. I also wonder, too, do you think it's because parents are now more hypervigilant about at least our generation, about what their kids are doing? And, like a lot of people now won't even let their kids go to sleepovers.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's
us now. Having all the experiences that we had, and maybe we too had some. I mean, this didn't happen to me at a sleepover, but I mean, I'm just saying that, like, creepy dad or, that weird teacher that kind of like
who
hugged you a little too close or looked at you weird. Like, I think we're the generation of suck it up. Like, oh, that's my problem. I got to figure that out. But yeah, I think it's parents who have seen some stuff and know these things go on. So they're very hypervigilant. And I also think it's our culture. We're just so much better about these things. We now see that you're not a stud if you're 14 and you're sleeping with your 26-year-old teacher. That's not cool. That's not happening. And that attention that you're getting from this teacher or that teacher, like that isn't okay. I mean, I think some of the things Oprah, when Oprah said when she had from the Leaving Neverland documentary, I thought this was the best. This is like such a smart thing. And I think any parent needs to hear this, which is Oprah said, and she said it to the audience, she said, no adult man or woman should be that fascinated wanting to spend that much time with your kid. Like, and who am I going to hang out? I'm not going to hang out with someone else's kid. Do you know what I mean? Like, would you say, oh, I'm going to take little Billy down the road and let's go get ice cream and hang out for the full day? It's like, no, you don't do this with other people's kids. But I think that's like, I think it's really people speaking to, no, that is not okay. That is not nice for this guy down the street to want to take you fishing every weekend. That's suspicious.
Right. Or the coach that takes like a special interest in you. Coaches should not be taking special interest in you. Like they can take, they can coach you and do what they're going to do with you. And believe in you at school. But there's no reason for you to be leaving campus with this person or doing anything or going to anything. I mean,
you shouldn't be going to dinner there unless you're with your parents. Like it's all those things. It's all of it. It's like, it's not okay. And so I think a lot of it is, I think it's been our hypervigilance as parents But I think it's also just been just a matter of people just speaking out and saying, I mean, this is what we've talked about with Monica Lewinsky, and just people looking at things differently, being able to see things differently than they used to.
We're evolving.
We are evolving, even though it feels like we're not. We are actually evolving. This evolution, if you want to call it woke, fine. If being woke means that you care about other people, and then fine. But it's an evolution and it's growth. So it's a good thing. We're growing.
We're growing.
Look
Good
at
for
us. All right.
Okay. Well, thank you everyone for listening. If you enjoy our podcast, there's ways to support us. We have a Patreon. You can check that out, where we do weekly bonus episodes where we talk about, pop culture, what's happening. We talk a little bit more about our personal lives, whatever's happening in the world. You also get all of our free feed episodes ad-free. For the upper tier, you get once a month a special true crime bonus episode. And we also do a Ask Us Anything, where you can ask legal questions, therapy questions, or just anything at all questions. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the podcast. And we would appreciate it if you would go and leave us a review. That would really help us. A nice review, please. Yes. Or just rate us. But, you don't even have to write a review. You just click on the stars. That would help us out. We're also on social media, on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Okay. Well, thanks for tuning in.
Thank you.
Talk to you soon.
Bye.
Right. Bye.
This message comes from Jackson. Taxes aren't something you can only think about once a year. With investments, planning for tax day is year-round. Fortunately, Jackson offers tax-efficient products. Visit jackson.com for more information on how our products can make your tax bill a little bit less painful. Jackson is short for Jackson Financial Incorporated, Jackson National Life Insurance Company, Lansing, Michigan, and Jackson National Life Insurance Company of New York, Purchase, New York.